This is Movers and Shakers, where we interview the upcoming generation of Make It Happen multifamily investors to share their story.
Welcome to the Movers and Shakers podcast. My name is Gino Barbaro, co-founder of Jake and Gino, multifamily investor, educator, father, mentor, and I am joined by my co-host who is right next to me today in studio, Joshua Ryan Rusin. How you doing, Josh?
Gino, doing well, man. Feels good to be in a t-shirt and some shorts. A little warmer here in Florida than it is up in Tennessee. How are you doing today?
Josh, it's time for Christmas. Got the Christmas gifts. I got another kid in the neighborhood now to take care of. I had to buy a few more gifts. I'm excited about today's podcast. That's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, so let's talk about today's guest. We have Hadar Orkibi. So with 2 decades of full-time real estate experience, Hadar specializes in long distance, out of area and out of the country investing and is an asset manager with MFIholding.com. Hadar's portfolios includes multifamily apartments, a triple net commercial real estate in New Zealand and the United States, allowing him to exit the rat race with passive income and live a lifestyle by design with his family. Over the years, Hadar implemented different strategies, which included wholesaling, house flipping, subdivision, new construction, commercial real estate, joint ventures, and multifamily investing with a focus on apartment buildings that have value add upside potential. Hadar enjoys helping both seasoned and beginner real estate investors reach their wealth, income, and portfolio goals through multifamily real estate. Hadar is a coach with the Jake and Gino team and a co-founder and coach with the USA Multifamily Investing Mastermind Group, MIH Mastermind.com. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Hadar.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
So Hadar, how'd you get into real estate?
I got into real estate through quite an early age, really. You know, my dad had quite a few rentals in Israel that he bought over the years with no debt, you know, old school, one by one. Mm-hmm. And I used to help him just to paint and do some maintenance work as I grew up. So that's kind of sparked my interest. Mm-hmm. At some point, I became a licensed agent. So I started doing some rentals and some selling back in Israel. I got a license. But I quickly realized that it's really, I'd rather be on the other side of the spectrum to try and generate some passive income instead of going to work all the time trying to get these transactions done. Mm-hmm. So in the early 2000s, back then, my girlfriend, now wife, we moved to New Zealand. I got myself educated through not podcasts back then, CDs and reading books and online forums. There was no podcasts like we have right now. And gradually got the bag, started as a wholesaler, started then built some deposits, started flipping, slowly build the buy and hold portfolio and invested in New Zealand. About 4 years ago, Gino, I obviously identified that the New Zealand market matured to be a market like San Francisco, Boston, LA. You know, cap rates are very compressed. So mm-hmm. I really needed to make sure that I can keep grow my income goals because, you know, transaction is one thing, equity is another thing, mm-hmm. but what allows us to live lifestyle by design and really allow us to have financial freedom, if you like, is passive income. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I started researching investing in the US. I came across the Jake and Gino community. If you like, back then it was just you and Jake doing podcasts. The community was just picking up. And I reached out to you, Gino. We met in St. Augustine when I came from New Zealand to do my market research trip. We had a great beef salad in the restaurant. We had a good chat. And the rest is history. You know, I joined the community early on, learned everything I know right now from the community. And here we are today.
So before we talk about the Mojo's barbecue, because that was a great little brisket we had, why did you decide to move to New Zealand back in 2000?
We were living in Israel in the early 2000s. There was kind of a turmoil, if you like, a lot of turmoil, a lot of suicide bombers, a lot of an environment that especially my wife wasn't used to. You know, when you've been brought up in an environment like that, you get desensitized for those kind of things, and you kind of learn to live with it. Mm-hmm. But for my wife, who grew up on a farm in the Isle of Man, which is a little island between England and Ireland on the Irish Sea, she mm-hmm. wasn't used to that. Mm-hmm. And she had a sister in New Zealand. We went to travel there. We checked it out. It was very peaceful. It was very very friendly, and back then very affordable. So we decided to immigrate, and that's what happened back then.
So I want everyone to know, the first thing that I hear from a lot of students or potential people getting into multifamily, they say, well, I can't do it. It's not in my backyard. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have Hadar back on, is because nothing is in his backyard. It takes him 3 days just to get where he's going, right? I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I mean, literally, he can be in the air for 18 hours. And he's learned a lot of different tips, a lot of tactics, a lot of techniques, a lot of strategies on, team building, on building, your boots on the ground. How do you identify that? How do you work outside the market? So that's why I'm excited to interview him. But, one other thing, when you joined Jake and Gino back then, what were you looking for? What really were you missing in your, I guess, toolbox of real estate?
The two main things that I was missing and I gained through joining Jake and Gino in the beginning was, the first one was really the education. So I want to make an informed decision. I wanted to make sure that I know what I'm doing when I'm going to take those multifamily deal. Mm-hmm. And it really helped me. So the academy has all the information that we need in terms of the videos, in terms of all the documents that you can use to actually look into and really understand what's the process is from researching a market, finding the right market, what to look for when you underwrite and analyze a deal, and how to speak with brokers and take things as they progress through the journey. Mm-hmm. So that was very helpful, really, to fill up the education that I was missing, because it's all right, I've been doing single families for the last 20 years or so, but multifamily, it's a little bit different. And I had to learn that, and I had to come up to speed with that. And I was grateful to be able to have everything there for me to be able to fill up the gaps, if you like. Mm-hmm. The next thing, which is as important, is to be surrounded with like-minded people. And, everybody that I talk to, the Jake and Gino, especially our coaches that have been around for a while with the community, we're always saying how grateful we are to have such nice people, such a nice community that really supporting each other and really allowing you to grow and willing to share the knowledge and share the information. So there's no such thing as a silly question. I always felt that I'm able to go in the community, jump on the private Facebook page and ask the question and get the education that I needed. So not that, also the support. If I had any resistance, if I had any challenge, I can put it out there and I get instant message, no matter where I am. I'm in New Zealand, I got people helping me, whether it's you, Jake, or other members of the community with a bit more experience when I started, able to share and help.
I love that.
Yeah, Hadar, that's awesome. So I know the reason we're on this podcast here today is you just recently went full cycle on a deal with a refi and roll. And let's back that up a little bit. And let's talk a little bit about getting over the hump of buying a deal. Would you elaborate on kind of that process and what you went through?
Yes. So, since I started investing in the US, I started small. I got my feet wet. I chose in the market. I wanted to go and really make sure that my team on the ground in that market is going to perform. So I bought a triplex, then a fourplex. And then I started doing some, if you like, guerrilla marketing strategies, which I implemented through my experience as a wholesaler, a lot of cold calling, direct mail marketing, and so forth. So I built the list. And if anybody wants to hear the full story of the nuts and bolts of that, they can go back to the Movers and Shaker episode 126, where I cover that with Gino in detail. So now we're going to jump forward, but I'm just going to touch on that. It took me about 18 months to find that deal that Gino told me. I remember he told me that when I rang him, Gino, I'm feeling a little bit of resistance. I got this under contract. I'm doing it on my own. It's a very heavy value add, 30% economic vacancies. And I'm going to be, doing it from New Zealand, although I'm prepared to travel. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going to pull the plunge on it. Maybe I'm not going to, maybe I've got a bit, resistant. I got fear in me. And Gino told me, this is a life-changing deal. You need to, just put the blinds on and go for it. So that's what I did. I really decided that I'm going to rip off the bandage, trust the process that I learned, commit and don't quit, and took the deal down and really decided that I'm going to grab the bull by the horn and make it happen.
So can I make a couple of distinctions of what you said in the last couple of minutes? Because there's a couple of golden nuggets in there for everybody. The first thing, Hadar had realistic expectations. He didn't think he was going to become financially free in the next 12 months, right? He went in there. He said, you know what? I need to create a plan. Jake and Gino have laid the plan out for me. What does that look like? Think big, but start small. A triplex. Most people are going to poo-poo the triplex, but guess what? A couple months later, a 4 unit comes up. And then guess what? 6 months later, a 44 unit deal comes up. That's how life works. We are not born to run. We first learn how to crawl, then we learn how to walk, and then we learn how to run. And I think that's what multifamily is all about, especially with the ecosphere that you have at Jake and Gino. You have that ability to say, you know what, I've got this deal. How does this work? The second thing is the ability to hold yourself accountable. Now, if you look back at it and go, oh, well, I'm not going to invest in my education because I don't, it's not just the education, it's that accountability piece when you are having, as you know, Stephen Pressfield wrote the book Resistance. We all have resistance. And I'm going to tell everybody on the call right now that's listening, if you haven't had resistance, then you're not living life. Because when you have resistance towards something, that means you have to go towards it. That means that is your duty. That's your calling. And the 44 unit deal, when I looked at the numbers, any educated investor would have looked at those numbers right away and said, okay, great. Hadar is educated. He knows what he needs to do. But sometimes the fear takes a hold of you. And the problem is fear paralyzes, and you don't take action with fear. Anger and you know that ability to raise your level of energy is how you're going to find the solution to it. So when I saw the deal, I remember it, looking at it going, you're paying this per door, you have these rents, you have this much equity. I was really excited. And everyone, guess what? He bought it before the pandemic, but he's doing all these renovations and the rehab during the pandemic. So there's no excuses here. If he had done this even 3 years ago, it would have been even more money, but that's not the point. This can be done at any part of the market cycle if you know what you're doing and you follow the groundwork. So that was more than a couple of golden nuggets for me, but that was really important. Everybody out there, don't make excuses that you got to get into a big deal. You've got to get into a good deal by following the buy right, manage right, and finance right, which Hadar is going to be going over. That 3-step framework, which is really important, and then implementing it and going slow. Set those realistic but high expectations, because I'm sure Hadar 2 years ago said, I can't do a 44 unit deal. That's stretching it for me. But you know what? You want to stretch it. You want your goals to be exciting at the same time, but realistic. Because if Hadar is going to say, I'm going to do a 100 unit deal on my first one, probably won't happen. But what he did, he started small, worked on it, and then he grew his way into this 44 units. So you want to add anything to that, Hadar?
Yes, I would like to say that I will do this 45 unit deal any time of the day, over 100, even 100, 200 unit deal, because I just created $1 million worth of new equity in 1 year. We're going to go into a little bit more details of the finance, right? And I refi and roll all my money out, plus some more. I'm still going to cash flow the same. So, which is infinite return. So I'm willing to buy those 45 unit deal 10 times over. And I encourage everybody. But the main point on this is that if you want to be successful, you need to do and prepare to do what others are not. So you really need to grind. You need to understand that it's a process. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, as you say, Gino. It's really something that you need to be committed to. Keep working on it. Surround yourself with the right people, with the right advice, with the right community that helps you to go through the challenges, through the times when there is frustration, through the times when there is challenges and resistance, because it takes a little bit longer to get a deal done. If you manage to pull it through and you manage to be persistent, you will make it.
Love that.
Love that. All right. So you get the deal, you buy it. We obviously know where you took it, but let's talk about that process of managing and repositioning the deal, especially during COVID and all the way from New Zealand.
Yes. So when we were about to close on the deal, I was actually in the US. I expected it to take about 10 days, and it was kept extending and extending, not because of me. It was because of the sellers. There was few partners, and one of them wasn't able to sign, and all of that. So I just kept extending my stay in America. I was rang my wife. I said, listen, it's taking a bit longer. I think I need to stay another week, and then another week. And she was very supportive. She was saying to me, that's fine, you're already there, just make it happen, and I'm really grateful for having that support. It's very important to get support at home, because if you got resistant at home as well, it makes it difficult. So very important to try and communicate with your spouse, with your partner, so you get some support. Whether they're involved or not, they need to let you do what you need to do so you can make it happen. And understand, like Gino, like you teach, I listen to all the podcasts, you need to show your spouse what's the benefit of financial freedom. How can you help them to enjoy it as well? And this is very important, because that's how you bring them on board.
That's right. I agree, Hadar. So real quick, I have to add it to that. My wife became financially free on August 30th, 1998. That's when we got married. So she hasn't had to worry about money for her entire life. But when I say financial freedom to her, that doesn't mean anything. But when I say, hey, we can fly your mother-in-law down, your mom down for a vacation, or hey, we can donate to this charity, or hey, you know what? We're flying to New York next month. We don't have to really worry about the money. Those pictures are a little bit different for her. So explain to your significant other, explain to your partner what can really happen. And don't use just words, financial freedom or making more money. Paint the picture, paint the story for them and lock them into it and show them the possibilities. And once I did that to my wife and she found out what I was doing with Jake and Gino and found out what I wanted to do with multifamily as I was grinding at the restaurant, it was a lot easier when I had to, do an extra hour's worth of work, or I had to fly down to Tennessee from my day off and I couldn't spend time with the family. She understood the long-term benefits of it, taking the short-term hit.
Yes, and make sure you celebrate your small successes, whether you buy a deal or whether you got a small win that you managed to do something. Make sure you celebrate and you include them in the celebration, because it's a team sport. Whether your spouse or your partner is involved in the day-to-day, you want to make sure that you celebrate it. So their sacrifice of waiting for you to nail that first deal is paid off. So long story short, we ended up closing on the deal. Everything went well. Then I went back to New Zealand and started implementing my management plan, my repositioning plan, if you like. One of the key factors is, when you do it from afar, is to have a good team on the ground. I had my weekly communication call with my property manager. I want to make sure that my property manager is kept accountable for my vision, my goal, and my plan, how to reposition those units. What are we starting for? What are we going to do exactly? How are we going to implement the unit terms? Are we going to do paint throughout? Are we going to do flooring? Are we going to do new light fittings? When I did the walkthrough, I actually took videos of every single apartment. So once something turned, a unit turned, and we needed to make the decision what to do, how to turn that unit, I was able to tell, hey, the carpets are all right, the appliances are all right, just do painting and light fittings. I was able to give them the instruction because I did the back work when I was already there. Another person that and it's still crucial for my team, is Eddie, my maintenance guy. He is really a local guy that I got introduced to through referral. This is another tip: when you're going into a new market, you get your team stabilized through referrals, because then you basically shorten the timeline in terms of finding somebody good. If you refer to him and you know he's good, then you got better chance to success. So communicating regularly, making sure that everybody understands what their roles, what you expect from them. And I use WhatsApp. So WhatsApp allows me to send voice messages and to do audio and video walkthrough if I need, if there is a questions of specific matter in the property.
I love that.
When the pandemic hit, we really decided that we are going to focus on resident retention and relationship. We really wanted to make sure that moving forward, in about late February, we're not going to lose any residents. And that's something that we learned through talking to members in the community, listening to your Monday calls. And when you and Jake, Gino, you describe how are you handling the situation. So we implemented no rent increase. Luckily, we gave some rent notices to some resident when we took over, and they were supposed to be implemented in June or July. We gave them 6 months, like, hey, from June, July, it's going to increase. So those one actually kicked in because the notice was given before COVID. The ones that were vacant, which is about 15 apartments or so, we were able to renovate them, price them $10 or $15, a little bit below market, not so aggressive, and fill them up quickly, even within COVID, because we knew that the product is good, we knew it's attractive, and even my property manager told me, your property is the hottest property we have in terms of the demand. So that helped a lot. We implemented no late fees. We were unable to file eviction at some point. So, we wanted to be very focused on resident retention. We implemented payment plans. So we deferred some payments in a month and then spread it over 12 months. We implemented digital leasing and 3D video tools, the walkthrough, which allows residents or potential residents to actually go and see the apartment, the layout, walk through the apartment on a 3D. And I used it and I put the link on Facebook Marketplace, which was really saving us time and really, if you like, allowing people to decide if they want a unit before they actually went to do a walkthrough. Because back then, when COVID started, everybody was panicking. They didn't want to go in and start being surrounded by other people walking through. So the 3D walkthroughs and the digital signing of the lease were a crucial point that COVID accelerated, if you like, the use of those things.
I love that. So there's a few things I want everyone to write down here. First thing is Hadar over communicated. You need to over communicate. Even if it is in your backyard, you should be getting on at least weekly calls with your property management company, having certain key performance indicators, KPIs. What are delinquencies? What are vacant units unrented? What are lease evictions, right? What are, lease terminations? Whatever that looks like, whatever your KPIs, make sure you're on those calls weekly. The next thing is Hadar did a lot of work on the front end. He actually was very proactive. Another thing, he's being proactive in his communication, but he's also being proactive with his ability to go into every single unit, document every single one. So when the property manager calls him up and says, hey, we have unit, 15 available, Hadar can go back and look and say, you know what? That unit doesn't need a $6,000 turn. We can do a lighter turn of $3,000. Not only is he saving the budget, he's making sure that the property manager knows that he's minding the store without being there. The next thing is hiring Eddie, the maintenance tech. That's important, going in there and asking for referrals, because you want to work with people who are working on the team already. If they know people they're working with, that'll save you a lot of time. And the other thing, the digital plans, the virtual leasing, that's the flexibility there, being flexible and saying, my plan was X. Well, I can't raise rents right now. I just need to actually have these apartments leased. Even if I don't go to market right now, I can go to market if and when the pandemic breaks. But for right now, I need to be flexible. I need to implement virtual leasing, and I need to keep these residents on. Josh, you want to make any points to that?
No, Hadar. I mean, I think it was proper preparation prevented piss poor performance, right? The 5 Ps. I really think you crush it. How about this? What were some of the biggest lessons learned during this whole thing?
Okay, so one of the biggest lessons is that we really needed to improve our marketing. So we really improved our marketing effort, Facebook, Google My Business. If you need to create a website which is kind of showcasing the property better, so you basically minimize exposure for people to kick out the can, and they got everything is there. We also, a very important point that we did is review the competition. You want to review your competition in the market and see exactly what they are doing. Are they offering concession? Are they offering, hey, renew your lease and we'll knock down $50 or $100 for the first month just to lock them in? So you want to keep those good tenants that are they're paying. So reviewing your competition is very, very important. For example, we also, I want to touch on an important point that we really started on reducing our expenses once COVID kicked in. I was focusing on capital preservation, and I just decided at some point that I'm going to stop withdrawing for my construction loan. I got a construction loan, so I bought the property and then I had the construction loan, and the whole borrowing was 75% to the cost. And what happened was I started basically using the cash flow, which is something that we're not recommending to do, but I chosen to do that because I don't have to answer to any partners or distribution to investors or anything like that. So anyway, I'm not drawing from the property, so I let the cash flow accumulate and stop drawing from the construction loan. So I start using the cash flow to pay off for some of the ongoing renovation unit turns and expenses. And what happened was that at some point we had a flash flood in that market, and one apartment got really flooded really bad. So we had to go and do an engineer restructure of the contour of the land and build a retaining wall, build some basin catches for the water, which cost about $26,000. Because I was able to retain some of the capital through not using it and using the cash flow, I was able to afford that and just pay it off, and it looks great now. So, returning your capital and focusing on capital preservation in hard time is very, very important to do. We really wanted to, for the first 2 or 3 months of COVID, focus on urgent maintenance requests, but did not deal with the bits and pieces to do with the repositioning, which are unurgent. Well, one of to your question, in a little bit more information, I think very important to share, is one of the lessons we learned was that forming relationship with subcontractors early on and make sure you pay them fast and on time will really, really benefit you when you are walking to turning up unit and need people to be reactive and get in and do the job when you need it. Because when you got a unit down, if it's 2 weeks over more than what it should be, that's costing you money.
Mm-hmm.
So I always make sure that I pay my contractors fast, and they get paid and they're happy. So, and then every time I ring them, if I got something urgent come up, they will go and they will prioritize working with me in opposed to somebody else, because we have a friendly relationship. I even took my electrician for lunch twice, and Eddie and his dad, who's tagging along, helping him retire, that kind of thing. I took them for lunch, and it was very, very nice. Mm-hmm. Another important point is your banking relationship. You really want to establish those relationships when you're choosing a market. I could not emphasize more early on. You want to make sure that you have at least 3 banks that you're talking to. Perhaps you open a bank accounts with, and you start building your relationship with. I even took a secured credit card for $1,000 and did a small payment for the local business journal online, just to build that credit history, just to build that record. Now, even better, now that I managed to refi some money, and you made a bit of deposits with those 3 different banks. So banks like deposits. If you put deposits with them, they will be there to support you when you get a deal which is a heavy lift, which is something that maybe some others wouldn't, which they look at it more risky. If you put 50,000, 10,000, even 5,000 with one of those local community banks, they will be there for you when you need them, when you need to take down a deal that it's challenging. Very, very important.
Let me recap a few of those tips. I want everyone to write this down. The first thing that Hadar focused on was the marketing effort. Craigslist, Facebook ads, Google ads, whatever you need to do, you need to market that property, apartments.com. The next thing, you should always be reviewing your competition, whether you're managing a deal or whether you're buying deals. When you're in the market, looking at what other competitors are doing, it may give you an advantage. If you see that they're giving concessions, then that market may be soft. So having that ammunition and going on Google, looking at the Google reviews, taking a look at all that, maybe even calling the competition up, seeing what their processes are, may be a great way to review the competition. The third thing, which is really important, having a little bit of CapEx savings, having that buffer in the bank account where you have an extra $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, whatever that may look like, compared depending on what size property you have, really takes a lot of pressure off of you. Because when you do have a flash flood, or when you do have a tree fall on a property, or some kind of damage that's unexpected, you have the money to take care of it. And the last one, I like that, the one with the banks. That's really important, having a relationship with community banks, because you start off with them and you can refi to the community bank, but it's great. You can go back to agency, whatever. But the community banks, especially when you're first starting out, they do loans that are less than $1 million. They're very flexible. They're very easy to work with, and they can get a lot of stuff done pretty quickly, especially during COVID. Their restrictions are less than the agency. So especially now, having those relationships are important. What I want you to do, Hadar, is give us an idea, purchase price, price per unit, what the rents were, what you got the rents to, what the valuation was, and all the other numbers, refi amount, that, and everything like that. Can you do that for us?
Yeah, sure. So I bought it and that's really a deal that, I'm not expecting every deal in my market to be like that, but that's what happened when you're willing to work hard and you retaining the relationship and making it happen. So I bought the apartments for 27,000 rounded up number per door. Mm-hmm. I spent about 6,000 per door. I'm just running the number upwards. So, about 33,000 all in. I all in cost. So I bought the property for 1,050,000 plus about 350 construction loan. So it's 1.4 million. Mm-hmm. The bank lent me 75% of that, of the cost. Mm-hmm. And again, just touching on the relationship, a lot of banks wouldn't want to fund it because of the 30% economic vacancy. Yes. The community bank that I worked with told me, hey, we're going to do the loan. You have the relationship with us. You had a little bit of a deposit. You had a credit card. The terms are not going to be as good. It's going to be only 20 years amortization. It's going to be 5.5% interest rate, which is quite high even last year. But we're going to do the loan for you because you have the relationship. Agency wouldn't touch it anyway because its occupancy is not high enough. Mm-hmm. So we had those numbers, all in 1.4 million. We've done the job. We took the property after. I'm sorry, let's touch on the rent. The rents were $450 per unit. resident pay all utilities, so everything is electric and the water is metered to the tenant. I got no, apart from night watchers, which is like $30 a month. There's nothing to pay. And the rent, we increased the rent from 450 to 595. That was a sweet spot, you know. While market rent, it's about 610 for that property. So there was a significant loss to lease, which meaning opportunity to increase rent to market. And if we had some pet, so we add another $15 on that. So you know the apartments with pet owners were renting for about 625, 630. So we're really managing to get a really good return on that. So those are the numbers in terms of that. The entry cap rate was very, very low. And that's another point I wanted to touch on in terms of what we learned. We learned that because of the economic vacancy, because the rent was so low below market, because the same owner built this community 30 years ago, you know, of course the entry cap rate was low because the income was very, very small, because it was mismanaged and there was vacancy. So I was probably somewhere around in the high 4%. But that didn't matter to me because I knew where I can take the property to. I knew that once the asset is stabilized, it's going to blow out and it's going to be very, very high return on investment. So that's another important lesson. 12 months later, we are at fully % occupancy. The appraisal came in at, we more than doubled the rent. The appraisal came in at 2.45 million. So it's $1 million more than what we, what I paid for it and put all in a year ago. And I managed to go to, so I couldn't go to agency. I talked to Will Coleman and we decided that we're going to wait another year because you have to have 2 years of ownership before you can actually do maximum loan proceeds from a cash out refi. And Freddie and Fannie will not do that if we are, within 1 year or just over 1 year. So we're going to wait. So I went to a credit union. Credit unions are regulated a little bit different than banks. They're less restrictive. We went to a credit union and the credit union gave me 25-year amortization, 4.25 interest rate. And we agreed on the amount of money that they will do that. So that was 1.5 something, which allows me to pull all my money out, plus about 100 and something thousand. Then we got the appraisal, which was a little bit higher than what I was actually expecting, to be honest. It was probably $300,000 more. I thought I'm going to be in the low 2 million, like 2.1. It ended up being like 2.4. So I could have asked for more even and got it because I'm still below the 75% loan to value that they would give me. But I was happy with that for now. And pulling all my money out, I'm paying the same loan monthly payments. And it's P&I as well, principal and interest. It's not an IO. The original bank did give me an IO and needed interest only. So I got principal and interest payment. I'm paying the same loans. And after pulling all my money out, I'm still going to cash flow about $50,000 a year.
How much a year?
70.
So everyone out there, important, any new investor out there would have said on the front end, I'm not getting a loan for 5.5% interest rate. That interest rate's too high. Sometimes don't focus, people step over dollars to pick up pennies. Sometimes people are focusing just on the interest rate. Not important. It's the cost of capital. What's that money costing you? What can you do with that money? Even if you're paying a higher interest rate, within the next 12 months, you're going to refi that out and get a better loan. So that's really important. Even on the front end, the 20-year amortization. I think if Hadar had pushed a little bit, he may have been able to get to 25, but that's okay. He got 20 years. He got the loan. There was no excuses. The thing that I'm really excited about is I know in the next year it's going to stabilize even more. It's going to, I guess, mature even more. Rents are probably going to bump up a little bit more. Everything's going to look better. It'll probably appraise for 2.6 million. He can go to agency, maybe pull out a little bit, maybe pull out a couple $100,000 more, but get a 30-year amortization. Rates are going to be around 4%. He's going to probably get 3 years of interest only. Maybe depending on the size of the market, maybe even let's say 2 years of interest only. His payment's probably going to drop with the new debt on there, have more capital in his pocket, and have an asset that's throwing off $90,000. So the idea of having resistance, looking at a deal, not doing the deal, saying, what do I need? Then calling up saying, okay, Gino says I should do this deal. This looks great. Now I got to get to work. Now I've got to fly here from Israel, spend a month here to do the closing, because I was on those calls. I remember Hadar sending me videos of the property, and just actually we were doing the podcast last time while he was closing this deal, going through that whole process. And Hadar, what was like the time you closed till like the refi? How many months was that time period?
It was about 11 months. So it was just
11
under
months.
12 months. And
Wow.
in regard to increase, I had about 10 or 8 units of residents that been there for like 3 or 4 years. And I didn't do anything with them. They were left at 450. On the 1st of December this month, I actually instructed my property manager to give them all notice that rent goes out on the 1st of January from 450 to 550, still well below market.
Yes.
And all of them are signing up now and getting all the lists. So this is another chunk of if you want, few $1,000s a year that will be, and I don't need to do anything to the units, anything.
Yes.
You know. Yes. So these are like an additional progress, as you said, to get this property further stabilized.
Wow.
Gino, I want to touch on 3 or 4 more points, which I think is very important in terms of the lesson I learned.
Sure.
The first lesson is that when you take in a property which is reasonable value add, and you're going to start increasing those rent, new sheriff in town kind of situation, you really want to expect that the first 6 months could potentially have higher vacancies than you anticipate. Because if you had some bad apples over there, whether you know or you don't know, they will know that there is a new sheriff in town, and they might just leave and just move out. And a lot of them will move out, especially if you're doing a C-type asset. They will move out, leaving all the garbage in the apartments. So you will need to clean it up and all that, and expect to have more economic vacancies as a whole in the first 6 months. Another point to mention, which is very, very important, I actually noticed that, is utilities transferred. When you have a property that all utilities are on the residents, you want to make sure that your property manager, or you, which is in my case, I took that and dealt with that, is transferring the utilities onto the management company immediately after the resident is moving out. The reason is because if you don't have electric and it takes another week to get that sorted, you can't go in and start renovating those apartments. So last time we talked on I think, Gino, on one of the masterminds that we had with the other coaches, you asked me, how did you manage to turn that so fast? You must have done, very strong asset management. This is one of the things that I really learned, is that you really need to be on top of it. And turning the utilities adds to the speed of how fast you can turn those units. So it's very, very important. Another point is that we started doing granite. I talked to a couple of appraisers, and they told me, if you do granite, it will appraise for like so-and-so a door, let's say 55 a door or whatever, 60 a door. We started doing granite. I've done about, I think, 7 or 8 apartments with granite, which is about $1,500 a pop each. And then we reviewed it after like two months or 3 months of doing it. And my property manager told me, hey, we don't have to do granite. You're still going to hit those rent levels without granite. So I peel that back to resurfacing the countertops for only, actually resurfacing the countertop, resurfacing the bathtubs with the inserts and the vanity in the bathroom for all in $380 in opposed to granite. And I threw in backsplashes, subways for another $280 that Eddie did. And I'm all in 500 or so. And stop doing granite. So sometime, and it's very important lesson that I always also teach and mention, is that do not overcapitalize if you don't have to, because you're not getting that money back. So that's the important lesson that I wanted to share.
So now, if you said to me, hey, Gino, I'm paying $1,000 for granite, the other stuff is 400, there may be an opportunity to say, you know what, granite lasts forever. I can keep it there for the next 10 years. If I have an apartment and I turn it 3 or 4 times, I'm gonna have to pay $1,000 to $1,200 to turn that apartment 3 times. It's gonna take me speed, right? It's gonna take me a lot longer to turn the apartment if I have to keep resurfacing the countertops. But that delta, that big difference between the granite you're paying now and it doesn't make sense to turn it to granite. I would resurface that countertop every day a week. So that's an excellent tip for everybody. You're not living in these apartments. You go with what the customer wants, what the resident wants. And especially during these COVID times, a lot of residents, they want a clean, safe, affordable apartment. They may not be looking for these amazing amenities that we think that we want. So make sure you understand what your customer wants. That's really important. Let's
Yes.
take a quick time out to hear from our sponsors. Are you looking for ways to improve your life?
Here at Jake and Gino, our mission is to empower students through financial education and the vehicle of multifamily investing.
Yes, Jake. We agree that a person with financial intelligence can change the world for the better.
We've created our proprietary 3-step framework, buy right, manage right, and finance right, that we teach to our community. This framework, along with education, our one-on-one mentorship, on-site boot camps, and the amazing community has propelled our students to massive success.
We've all been there. We've had so many students that have been able to shift their mindset, overcome limiting beliefs, and set a clear path to achieve their goals. Whether you're currently fixing and flipping, wholesaling, or buying single-family rentals, and you know that multifamily investing is the right vehicle for you, I encourage you to visit jakeandgino.com/apply to schedule your complimentary consultation with our team. And I want to let you know this isn't a high-pressure sales call. It's really just a discovery call to get to know each other better and see if we're a good fit for working together. And if for any reason we're not a good fit, our team has tons of resources we will share with you to help you along your journey.
If you're ready to stop spinning your wheels, go to jakeandgino.com/apply and schedule your call now.
All right, Hadar, I got some short answer questions for you here. All right, so let's say you could take it back and you're a brand new investor. What advice would you give to a new investor that's listening on this call?
The journey is as important as the goal. The journey is as important as the goal. Enjoy the process. Get yourself educated, surrounded with like-minded people. And if you stick to it and you don't give up and you're being persistent, and you understand that, you will get there.
Love that. All right, what about your biggest keys personally to success?
Have a healthy mindset. Work on my well-being regularly, which is very, very important. Whether you go for a walk, whether you go to the gym, whether you meditate, that's the main thing for me initially. Mm-hmm. The second is surrounding myself with like-minded people, being persistent, and gaining clarity on your why. If you have a strong why, it keeps driving you, it keeps motivating you, and you're going to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Hadar, I love that. All right, what about your favorite book?
Latest, I read The Honeybee. I actually gave it to a couple of people already. Mm-hmm. And, even me, Jake, Jake and Gino community, I've been with you guys for a long time. Even for me, and I always hear your message and learn and always take everything in. Even to me, it sparks, what else I can do? How can I go vertically integrated? Mm-hmm. And it really, I really enjoy that. So if anybody wants to read a great book and you didn't read The Honeybee yet, get it. And if you did, buy it to someone else that could do with it, because it's a great book. I love this book.
Awesome. Well, listen, this has been an amazing episode. And for me, the biggest takeaway here is, Hadar, you're an absolute case study of what is possible when you get educated and take massive action. You get massive results. Gino, what else do you have to add to that?
So Hadar moves to Israel in the year 2000 and
New Zealand.
I'm sorry, from Israel to New Zealand. So I was thinking back, so I'm thinking about your story even before. You worked in a vineyard also when you were in New Zealand, correct? I remember you mentioning that to me in the last podcast, and I have that picture of working. You're working for,
nothing. It's $11 an hour, New Zealand dollar, which is like $7. But that's a long time ago. But still, it was minimum.
But what I'm saying is like that you start out all brand new. You go to a new country, New Zealand, and you start flipping. You start wholesaling deals, and you're doing transactions, and that's actually great because you're making good money, right? But I think there comes a point when you're saying to yourself, how is everyone else around me getting so wealthy? What are they doing differently than I'm doing, right? And then finally, the interest sparks because you have a problem. The problem is that the New Zealand market is really overbought. It's just expensive. It's turned into these other markets, like you mentioned, Boston, San Francisco, LA, New York. And then you decide, let me come into New York. Let me come into the United States and start looking at other properties, at other types of multifamily assets in this country. Most people would have been like, I'm not doing that. I don't know how you had the courage to do that. You come here. I meet you in 2016. We go out to lunch at Mojo's in St. Augustine. If you like barbecue, check it out. It's a freaking awesome place. And the conversation starts. And then, like you said, you start surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And then you do the education, but having that big why and being clear on what you're doing, why you're doing it is really, really important, because you can go back to New Zealand and then all of a sudden you lose interest and it's just so hard to get on a plane and you got to fly back here. It's expensive. It's a lot of time away from the family. You can make all those excuses, but you didn't make any of those excuses. You became clear. You selected a market. You focused on that market. You started buying smaller deals just to get your feet wet, just to prove the concept to your significant other, your spouse, your partner, your other partners, which include the banks, because the banks have to start lending money to you. And then you become persistent and use the skills that you had in your previous occupation, which was wholesaling and direct mailing and cold calling. You use that to find deals in multifamily. And then, you buy that multifamily deal at 44 unit. The community is really, I think, instrumental in any community, right? Just to be able to call up and say, hey, am I looking at this right? Because sometimes things seem too good to be true. And in this case, they did look like that way, but the deal was there. They just needed a lot of hard work. And, after 11 months going from 415 rents to 595, the asset valued from $1.4 million all into almost $2.5 million, doing a cash out refi in 11 months when everyone says this is not the right part of the cycle, but buying right and managing right and financing right will allow you to have these goals. It took 18 months to find this deal. If it takes you another 18 months to find another deal like this, so be it. It's on the conveyor belt. It keeps going. I know it's not going to take you that long. These other opportunities are going to be coming out there. So it's been awesome having you as a coach in the community. You're locked in. You enjoy what you're doing, and just continue to buy assets and continue to educate yourself and continue to grow out of your comfort zone. It's really
Yes.
it's inspirational story for me.
Thank you, and I really appreciate it, and appreciate the community. And we did buy with Abraham, which is another member of the community.
Yes.
Marco and I, we bought a 20-lot mobile home park in Nashville, and we are looking to buy some more assets. So it's just a process. Keep pushing, and want to make sure that the listeners understand that multifamily allows you to build the passive income generational wealth. And that's what we want. If you want to live a lifestyle by design, if you want to be there for your family, that's my strongest why as well. So focus on that. Don't give up. Join the community if you're not, and just make it happen. It's very, very important.
Thanks, Hadar.
Well, listen, Hadar, I want to thank you for being an amazing guest on the show and sharing your movers and shakers story. Now, guys, listen, if you like the show, please leave us a review. And until next time, make it a movers and shakers week. See you, everybody.
Thanks, Hadar. Take care, everybody.